Oh, my hip flexors are so tight. Well, that's not stretching the hip flexors, right? And a lot of times this couch stretch that people like to do with their foot up against the wall and then broken here, that's also not stretching your hip flexors. Not the ones that are super important anyways. I mean, they're all kind of important, but when we think about hip flexors, there's primary hip flexors like the psoas that connect to your spine, and then there's two joint hip flexors like the rectus femoris that flex the hip and straighten the knee out. So if you really want to focus on the hip flexor and not the quadricep muscles, then we need to change things, right? We need to make sure that when you're getting into this position, you're not arching your back because it connects to the spine. It goes from here down to here on the inside. So if this is coming forward, that muscle is just pulling you down. You're not actually getting a stretch. You get into here, like, yeah, I feel it in the front though. That's because you're hanging out on the end of your ligaments. Do this. Ideally, we'll be holding onto something for balance next to you. Get in this half kneeling position. Do a little hip hinge. Tuck your butt under, like a dog tucking a tail between its legs. Squeeze your butt. Use this hamstring to pull you forward. Hold that position. Don't be way down here. Don't lean back. Just tuck under, squeeze the glute, come forward. You'll feel like you hit a wall there, and you get a pretty good stretch. Now, if I stop squeezing my glute, you'll see my pelvis tips forward, and I stop getting any kind of stretch. If I want to double check it, I can just lean away, and that should increase the stretch if that's your hip flexor. Now, what causes the hip flexors to be tight to begin with? Well, one, they could be weak, right? So if you're stretching all the time and nothing changes, well, one, is there anything else going on? Do you have any numbness or tingling in your legs? Is there any pain down the leg, in the foot, the calf, anything weird like that? If so, it might be a reaction to an irritated spine. If not, there's a good chance you just have weak hip flexors, because when things are weak, the brain tells them to tighten and stiffen, and any amount of stretching doesn't help that, because the brain just continues to turn that muscle on to try to protect the joint, because it's not actually strong enough for the brain to think, I'm safe here, my hip is stable, let me let that muscle relax. Also, what we'll see a lot is that people will develop tight hip flexors in response to weak glutes, right? So they can't get hip extension, and things get tight in the front, weak in the back, right? So then we've got to strengthen up the back side too. So focus one leg at a time, making the glutes stronger as well, and then let us know how that goes.